Hey everybody, I wanted to share another little story with you today because I think it's easier to be a storyteller, and then you can ascertain what you need to out of these different things that I'm trying to communicate. And I'll start it off with the topic, which is that sexuality is a journey. And what does that mean? I'm not really sure that we all even can connect to that just yet, but there's firings happening in our synapses that are bringing that a little bit more to our day and age at this time. And I wrote down a few things here from ancient Greece, actually, and their definitions of different kinds of love. The first being eros, which we are pretty much all familiar with, which is sexual passion, desire, fertility, and the ancient Greeks would say that this was our first foundation of understanding love. And then we have philia, which is deep friendship, brotherly love, sisterly love, those kinds of things, which we're seeing people kind of band together now more and more and do these sort of male bonding, female bonding experiences. And we have ludus, or playful love, agape, we all hear of. I never really understood what it meant when I would see it on cars on a little sticker or whatever. It's really love for everyone. We call that maybe Christ consciousness, Buddha consciousness, Krishna consciousness. Just an expansive love, and often when we think about enlightenment, we think that's as far as we get. If we attain that, then we've attained everything. But it's kind of like shooting for the stars, and maybe you'll hit the moon. So if you shoot beyond what you're aiming for, you'll go farther. And if you're shooting just for agape, Christ consciousness, then the other things that kinds of love will be sort of the mile markers up to that point, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then they go on to talk about two more: long-standing love, pragma, or philautia. If you speak Greek, you can correct me on that. Love of the self-love. Now we might think of narcissus or narcissism in that, but the truth is we can't love everybody if we can't love ourselves wholly. We can't love ourselves wholly if we can't love everybody. And what that has to do with the sexual journey is that, again, I'm going to tie this back into Tantra. And the story is that a couple 3 years ago, my first vision that led me down the path of Tantra, which, of course, the path of Tantra has always been my journey. I just never really realized it until the last couple of years. But I was in this dream. It was a vision. And most of my dreams are visionary at this point, and they have been for a while. I was it's like a storefront kind of thing, and when I walked in, it was a lot of different from India, deity statues and whatnot. So Krishnas and Shaktis and, these different sort of things. And Indian people were working in there. And as soon as I walked in, they all got really weird. Like, I wasn't a regular customer. And they were like, "Don't judge." And I said, "Okay, I'm just here looking around. I don't even know why I walked in." And they just kept saying, "Don't judge." And, and I was like, "Okay, well, I won't then. I don't really know what we're talking about." And as soon as I said I won't, there was this back wall that had like a holographic door, and the holographic door appeared open, and they walked me through it. And when I walked through it, they kept saying, "Don't judge." And I was like, "Okay." Well, when I walked out, it was this big open grassy field behind, and there was a river running through, and there was a bridge in the background. And this bridge had like elephant tusks as arches along the bridge. And there was people everywhere, on the bridge, in the river, on the grass. And everybody was naked, and all the people that were on the grass were engaging in different acts of intercourse. And the people who were on the bridge were frolicking and naked and jumping into the river, playing with each other, very silly. And I can understand now why the message was "don't judge," because if I had looked at that through any other lenses, I might have taken it back to early Christian identification of what a heathen was, right? And hedonism. And so what it was telling me was that everybody there was in this act of purity and play. And all these Greek definitions of love right here were being played out equally. So there was everything from passion to love of the self to love for everyone, a godly kind of love. And it was all occurring at one time. And that was the purpose of this orgiastic sort of experience. Then time would go go on from that dream where I was trying to make sense of it off and on, and more things would start to come through, ultimately landing me, without my intention, in a tantric yogic school to become a yoga teacher through Tantra tradition. Now, granted, that school was here in the U.S., up in the mountains of Idaho, so there's a convoluted way that we go about trying to teach Tantra, and that school was trying to communicate it, but also kind of walk around the white elephant without getting right to it. And understandably, because Tantra is about 20% sex and the rest is all energy. It's all energy, but the rest has nothing to do with the direct act of maybe sex as we think about it. And so when you think of Tantra, even when you see me talk about it or advertise it, you might be thinking that I'm just trying to get people to get their clothes off and get wild. Well, based off the vision that I just shared with you, that's the vision that I hold. That even if it's getting playful and wild, that there's a particular order of events that lead to you being able to even access that sort of an experience, if I'm going to hold that space. Also, you have to be what they told me to be, in non-judgment. You have to be in non-lust. You have to be in non-desire, the way that we typically perceive it from our kind of lower brain system. And so the sexual journey really encompasses all of this. And then another little story is that what this ended up leading to, I'm sorry I'm moving around just to find a comfortable spot here, but what this ended up leading to was this last year, I found myself doing my energy sessions in a storefront. And so, it's not like the first thing on my mind was thinking about tantric sort of sessions. I was just trying to fit my work, as I'd come to do it, which was very shamanic, with the needs of the store. And, within just a couple of weeks of me working there, a black man, actually, from Chicago walked in. I think this is important to say. A hetero black man walked in. And we got into the session, and within a half hour, it was a 60-minute session, within a half hour, his body was convulsing. I didn't touch the genitals. I was just simply doing energy movement down through the body, doing a little bit of a massage type of manipulation. And that set off from then on, as I worked at this place up until the beginning of June last year, where body after body would get on the table and just boom, just blow up like that, just like go into convulsions. And about 30 to 40% of the people afterwards would go, whoa, there's no going back, is there? It would completely shifted their paradigm, their thinking, their perspective of their system and their sexuality, but not in the way that you're perceiving sexuality, not divine masculine and divine feminine the way that we define it, but more in the cosmic sense, because you experience this body release, this body pushing away of all the things that are lingering and blocking you from connecting to that true essence of energy that we all are. And it doesn't really have a gender once we get into those energy fields. So the sexuality as a journey really has more to do with returning to the ability to operate from these multifaceted experiences. Maybe we can use the Greek system, these 6 different ways of expressing love, and it's a connection to everything. And you don't have to drink ayahuasca for it. You don't have to do acid for it. You don't have to drink alcohol for it, smoke marijuana. It's just the energy that we are. And I thought it would be interesting to share a little bit of those stories, because not that I want to remove pleasure from the experience, because being in a human body, part of it is to experience pleasure in different ways. But more when you start to experience these blissful, energetic transformations and shifts, every time you go through one and you step in and you realize that there's no going back, suddenly your idea of what is and what isn't completely dissolve. And when those dissolve, then you start to realize yourself as a kind of a very divine, creative being that you can do whatever you want. There's a give and take. There's a process of releasing old stories that we've been accustomed to seeing and believing, and your belief system becomes more aligned with that true energy that flows through. And a lot of it is pleasurable. It's just pleasurable on multifaceted levels where you don't even really have to have sex to experience these big things. But through sex, the right way, not that anything is right or wrong, but through the way that it's like taking an orchestra that has never played before and they're kind of like trying to figure out their harmony, that's the usual human experience. Putting it together into a solid piece where you have this incredible, amazing, mind-blowing experience, that is what Tantra brings you to, where you can't describe it, you just go, whoa, there's no going back, I just had that experience. And so sexuality as a journey means that when you start to realize these things about yourself and about everything, the nature of everything, you're then living in a new realm. And the journey doesn't stop, it continues to grow, and there's trial and error on how to apply this to everyday life to kind of merge the bridge, to bridge the gap in between what we could say is heaven and earth, the usual earthy human experience and the heavenly experience, the divine experience, and learning how to really fuse that all together. And when you fuse it all together, you could say weave it all together. When you say weave it all together, you're talking about Tantra, because that is essentially the English definition or translation of Tantra. Weaving it all together and creating this big powerhouse experience with yourself. It's very superhuman, but because you've aligned with all these different levels of love, the last thing you want to do is actually hurt anybody. You also kind of know that nobody actually gets hurt. And then that's your formula. You start to figure these things out. There's a lot in that. There's a lot of storytelling, a lot of information. Just take what you can out of it, and know that you're never doing anything wrong. But again, like right now, most people are in the orchestra is just kind of coming together and figuring out what to do. The next step is to harmonize this and bring it into a brand new experience that the world hasn't seen yet. And that's what we're doing. Okay, well, on that note, I'm going to go ahead and sign off today. I look forward to connecting with you. Again, I'll put my information here if you want more information to communicate with me or to do a session. It's all here. Okay, thank you. Namaste.